All right, so today we're diving deep into NMN.
Nicotinamide mononucleotide.
Yeah, nicotinamide mononucleotide, exactly. It's the molecule that's got everyone buzzing about all sorts of health benefits, right?
Mm,
And we have a listener who's particularly interested in it.
yeah.
And specifically, its safety. So we're going to go straight to the source, a hefty document submitted to the FDA 2022 S BZO 0023 00029 content.pdf.
Right.
It might not exactly be beach reading, but
Oh.
let me tell you, it is packed with rat studies, dog studies, human trials,
Oh, wow.
the whole shebang.
And it turns out NMN isn't like some exotic chemical concoction. It's actually found naturally in foods like broccoli and avocados.
Really?
Yeah, who knew?
Wow, so you're telling me I've been getting a mini dose of NMN every time I eat my avocado toast.
Well,
Mind blown. But let's get serious for a sec. This listener is considering taking 300 milligrams of NMN daily, and they want to know if that's safe.
right?
So where do we even begin to unpack that?
Well, first things first, this document confirms what we already know. Uh, NMN is a precursor to NAD plus VOR, which is like the fuel that keeps our cells running.
Okay.
Think of it like this. NAD plus is the electricity that powers your house, and NMN is the power plant that generates that electricity.
Oh, I like that.
Without enough NAD plus VOR, your cells just can't function properly.
Okay, that's a great analogy. So more NMN, more cellular energy. Sign me up, right?
Well,
But hold on. Before we get ahead of ourselves, let's talk about how they actually make this stuff.
okay, so the document, it goes into detail about the manufacturing process.
Hmm.
But some of that information, well, it's redacted, trade secrets and all that.
Of course.
But what's important is that they really emphasize their rigorous quality control. They've done extensive testing to ensure the purity and stability of the NMN they're producing.
Okay, that's reassuring. No one wants to be popping mystery pills. Right?
Yeah.
But I'm curious, you mentioned NMN being present in food.
Right.
What's the deal with that? Is that enough to, make a difference?
So this is where it gets interesting. While it's true that foods like broccoli, avocados, and even tomatoes contain NMN, the amounts are minuscule compared to what you'd find in a supplement.
Okay.
We're talking like fractions of a milligram per serving.
Ah, so like finding a tiny gold nugget in your backyard
Yeah.
versus hitting a vein.
Exactly. And here's another piece of the puzzle. The FDA has issued what's called a no questions letter regarding the safety of NR. It's nicotinamide riboside,
Okay.
another NAD plus precursor, similar to NMN.
Oh, interesting.
Now, this doesn't directly apply to NMN, but it does suggest that there's some regulatory comfort with this whole family of molecules.
Okay, so that's a point in the safe column. But let's get to the real nitty-gritty, the
Yeah.
safety studies. I know our listener is especially interested in the animal research, so what did they find?
Well, they conducted a whole battery of tests on rats and dogs, everything
Yeah.
from short-term to long-term exposure.
Wow.
And the key takeaway here is they were looking for something called the NOAEL, the No Observed Adverse Effect Level.
The NOAEL.
Yeah, imagine you're slowly turning up the volume on a speaker.
Okay.
The NOAEL is that point right before you hear any distortion, any crackling. It's the highest safe level.
Oh, that's a perfect way to put it. So what was the safe volume, so to speak, for NMN in these animal studies?
So for rats, the NOAEL was a whopping 1,500 milligrams per kilogram of body weight per day.
Wow.
That's like a lot of NMN.
That's a lot.
Dogs, they showed a slightly lower NOAEL, around 340 milligrams per kilogram.
Okay, but those are animals, right? What about us humans? Surely that's what our listener really wants to know about.
Absolutely, and that's where we're headed next.
Yeah.
This FDA document references a number of human trials, and those are going to give us the most relevant insights into NMN safety for our listener.
All right, so we've laid the groundwork. NMN is found naturally in food, but in teeny amounts. The manufacturing process seems legit, and animal studies show a pretty high safe dose. Now, let's dive into those human trials. All right, human trials. Now we're talking. This is what I've been waiting for. We're finally getting to the good stuff. The
Yes.
research on actual people, taking NMN.
Yeah, exactly. And these trials weren't just looking at safety. They were investigating a whole range of potential benefits, too.
Like what? Spill the tea?
Well, there were studies on insulin sensitivity, muscle function, cardiovascular health,
Wow.
even sleep quality. They really put NMN through its paces.
Okay, color me intrigued. So what did they find? Did NMN live up to the hype?
Let's take a closer look at a few specific examples. One study focused on postmenopausal women with prediabetes, a group at higher risk for developing type 2 diabetes.
Okay.
They found that taking 250 milligrams of NMN daily for 10 weeks led to improvements in insulin sensitivity,
Hmm.
which is key for regulating blood sugar levels. And get this, they didn't report any adverse effects.
That's promising. I'm also curious about the athletic performance angle. Were there any studies on that? Did NMN give these folks a competitive edge?
There was a trial involving healthy amateur runners who took varying doses of NMN, up to 1,200 milligrams per day, for 6 weeks while maintaining their regular exercise routines.
Okay.
The researchers were interested in whether NMN would boost their VO2 max,
Right.
which is a measure of how efficiently your body uses oxygen during exercise, basically how fit you are.
Okay, so did NMN turn these runners into Olympians?
Well, not quite. The results were a bit mixed. Some participants did see improvements in VO2 max,
Okay.
but it wasn't a consistent finding across the board. What's important, though, is that even at that highest dose of 1,200 milligrams, there were no reported negative side effects.
So maybe not a magic performance enhancer, but still, good news on the safety front. You also mentioned a study on sleep quality, which definitely piques my interest. I could always use a better night's sleep.
This study involved older adults, and they took a pretty hefty dose, 1,500 milligrams of NMN daily for 12 weeks.
Wow.
The researchers used a standardized questionnaire called the Pittsburgh Sleep Quality Index to assess any changes in sleep patterns.
All right, spill the beans. Did NMN help them sleep like babies?
It's not quite that simple, unfortunately. While the study did find some evidence that NMN might improve certain aspects of sleep, the results weren't entirely conclusive.
Mm.
More research is definitely needed in this area. But again, even at that very high dose, there were no reported adverse events related to NMN.
So it seems like a recurring theme here is that NMN is generally well tolerated, even at doses higher than what our listener is considering. But how do we bridge the gap between, these research findings and real-life decision-making?
That's the million-dollar question. And it's crucial to remember that research is an ongoing process.
Right.
We're still learning about NMN's long-term effects.
Mm.
And there's always the possibility of interactions with other medications or pre-existing health conditions.
Right. It's not like we can just declare NMN a miracle supplement and call it a day. But based on the evidence we've discussed so far, it does seem to have a pretty good safety track record,
Yeah,
at least at the doses typically found in supplements.
I'd agree with that assessment.
Yeah.
The FDA document, along with the various human trials we've touched on, paints a consistent picture of NMN being well tolerated, even at doses higher than what's typically recommended.
So for our listener who's considering taking 300 milligrams per day, it sounds like they're well within the range that research suggests is safe.
Yeah,
But of course, it's always smart to, consult with a healthcare professional before starting any new supplement,
absolutely.
just to be on the safe side. Right.
Individual health histories and potential interactions can vary widely, so personalized guidance from a healthcare provider is essential.
Right. It's fascinating how much information we've uncovered just by, digging into this FDA document and the related research. We've gone from what NMN is and how it's produced to delving into safety studies and exploring, the nuances of human trials. Who would have thought a document submitted to the FDA could be so captivating?
But we're not quite done yet. There's still a few more intriguing points to cover. Remember how we talked about NMN being found naturally in foods?
Yeah.
Well, there's a key concept we need to unpack. Bioavailability.
Bioavailability. That sounds a bit technical. Break it down for me.
It's simpler than it sounds. Essentially, bioavailability refers to how much of a substance your body can actually absorb and utilize.
Okay.
In other words, just because you eat something containing NMN doesn't mean your body's going to use all of it.
Right.
The way a substance is delivered, whether it's through food or a supplement, can significantly affect how much of it actually gets into your system.
So even if I'm eating my weight in broccoli and avocados, my body might not be getting the full NMN benefit from those foods.
Precisely. And that leads us to a crucial question. How does the bioavailability of NMN from food compare to that from supplements?
All right, now we're getting to the heart of the matter. What does the research say?
Well, that's where things get a bit murky. There's limited data available on the bioavailability of NMN from different sources.
Mm.
So while it's certainly possible that taking an NMN supplement could lead to higher levels of NMN in the body compared to just getting it from food, we need more research to confirm that.
Okay, so it seems like bioavailability is the big question mark hanging over our heads. Something for our listener and all of us, really, to keep in mind as we navigate the world of NMN.
Absolutely. And it's a perfect illustration of how even the most thorough deep dives can reveal new avenues for exploration.
And that's what makes learning so exciting. It's a never-ending journey of discovery. But before we wrap up, I'm curious about one more thing. We've talked a lot about safety, but what about potential downsides? Are there any risks associated with taking NMN? Should our listener be worried?
That's a great question, and it's one we'll tackle head-on in the final part of our NMN deep dive.
All right, folks, you heard it here first. Get ready for the grand finale where we'll explore the potential risks of NMN and leave you with some food for thought, pun intended. Welcome back to the deep dive. For the grand finale of our NMN exploration, we've covered a lot of ground, from what NMN is and how it's made to, its potential benefits and safety profile. We even dug into those fascinating human trials. Who knew there was so much research already out there?
It's quite impressive, isn't it? But as with any substance that, interacts with our complex biology, there's always more to uncover. And that's where we're headed now. A look at potential downsides and areas where we need more research.
Okay, so let's get down to brass tacks. What are the potential risks associated with taking NMN? Should our listener be worried?
Well, it's important to emphasize that based on the available evidence, NMN appears to be safe when taken at reasonable doses. And remember, our listener is considering 300 milligrams per day, which falls well within the range that studies have shown to be well tolerated.
That's reassuring. But I'm guessing there are still some unknowns. What are the areas where we need more research?
One area is long-term use. Most of the human studies we've discussed involved relatively short time frames, weeks or months. So we need more data on the effects of taking NMN for years, even decades.
Right, that makes sense. It's like testing a new car. A short test drive might tell you how it handles, but you really need to put some miles on it to see how it holds up over time.
Exactly. Another area that needs further investigation is potential interactions with medications.
Yeah.
While there haven't been any red flags so far, it's crucial to be cautious, especially if someone is taking multiple medications for pre-existing health conditions.
So the takeaway here is to talk to your doctor before starting NMN, especially if you're already on other medications. Better safe than sorry, right?
Absolutely. And then there's the issue of individual variability. Everyone's biology is unique, so what works well for one person might not have the same effect on another.
You're right. We're not all cookie-cutter humans. So even though the research looks promising, it's important to remember that individual responses to NMN might vary.
And that brings us back to the concept of bioavailability, which we touched on earlier.
Right.
Remember, the way a substance is delivered can significantly affect how much of it your body actually absorbs and utilizes.
So even if two people take the same dose of NMN, their bodies might process it differently depending on factors like, genetics, gut health, or even what they eat that day.
Precisely. And we still need more research to fully understand how bioavailability impacts the effectiveness of NMN.
Okay, so we've got long-term effects, potential interactions, individual variability, and bioavailability. Those are some pretty big question marks. It seems like there's still a lot we don't know about NMN.
That's true, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. It just highlights how much more there is to discover. And it's important to remember that even with these unknowns, the current research paints a generally positive picture of NMN's safety profile, especially at the dose our listener is considering.
What strikes me is how much this deep dive has revealed about the complexities of scientific research.
Right.
It's not always about clear-cut answers. It's about weighing the evidence, acknowledging the unknowns, and making informed decisions based on the best available information.
Well said. And that's ultimately the goal of these deep dives, to empower listeners with knowledge so they can navigate the world of health and wellness with greater confidence and curiosity.
It's been quite a journey, hasn't it? From that daunting FDA document to fascinating human trials and thought-provoking discussions about bioavailability and the unknowns of long-term use. Who knew NMN could be so captivating?
It just goes to show that even the most seemingly mundane topics can spark a sense of wonder and a thirst for knowledge.
Well, folks, that wraps up our deep dive into NMN. We hope you've enjoyed this exploration as much as we have. Remember, informed decisions are empowered decisions, so keep those questions coming, keep seeking knowledge, and keep diving deep into the fascinating world around us.
Until next time, stay curious.